ghoul friends. It's me, Adrian, or Ayden. Either way, you are still listening to Susto, the show centered on ooky spooky scary stories from Latin American and Hispanic cultures. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. And if this is your first time, welcome. Welcome to the family. You're possessed now. You're haunted now. The devil's fault. No, I'm kidding. Ghoul friends, I am back now from the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival in Denver, Colorado. I had a hell of a time. It was so much fun. I made so many cool connections. I reunited with old friends, met some people IRL for the first time ever, and made new friends. It was truly, truly, truly such a great weekend. I left feeling reinvigorated and re-energized about Susto. Of course, I always say this, I never had plans to stop, but anytime something like that happens, it puts more fuel into my fire, if you will. So yeah, it was a great weekend. If you are a best ghoul friend on patreon.com/sustopodcast, then I made a couple of vlog videos just kind of recapping my days. But I will say some of the biggest takeaways for me were I left also with a newfound confidence in my ability as a live podcaster or as a performer or entertainer, if you will. It's very different, sitting in my home office right now, it's just me on the mic versus being in a room with people and getting real live reactions and feeding and working off of that and collaborating with other people. So all that to say, the live show that I did was so cool. I said, okay, I know what direction to move in from here on out. It's basically what I've been doing, but this was like a benchmark. Huge shout out to all of the volunteers and the panelists and attendees and everyone at True Crime Paranormal Podcast Festival, especially Lainey Hobbs. We had an amazing weekend. We got to spend a lot of time together. Lainey from It's Haunted What Now and True Crime Cases with Lainey. Please go check her out, of course. And aside from that, I did a panel with Christina and Carmen from Spooky Tales, who we finally got to meet in real life, and it was like running around with my cousins when we were like 12-year-old, just scaring the shit out of each other. And we also did the panel with Stephanie Strange from Getting Strange with Stephanie Strange, and she was amazing. She's such a sweetheart. And also with Haunted Detective with Pamela and Kelsey, they were also so amazing. And we really just, rocked that panel. I think it went well, and I'm so grateful to everybody who showed up to the panel, and we were able to have a really cool discussion about the ethics in storytelling and paranormal investigations. As always, there's always more to come with Susto. I'm always telling you to keep your eyes and ears on it because I'm always working for the next steps, for the next evolution of this show. So I will also say it was kind of bittersweet to attend this True Crime Paranormal Podcast Festival because next year it is going to be in Boston and it is going to be the True Crime Podcast Festival, no paranormal. But with that being said, I may still attend if I can swing it. But with that, there will also be a new festival called Beyond the Veil Festival, which aims to unite paranormal creators. That festival will be in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm so excited because I love New Orleans. I think it's amazing. I think it is one of the spooky capitals of the world. If you haven't yet, make sure to follow them on Instagram. You can also visit their website. It's beyondtheveilfest.com for any and all updates on the show. If you are a paranormal creator, there is an interest form on the website if you're interested in participating. So please go check that out. Follow them online. And of course, the amazing Lainey Hobbs is behind this festival. So I already know it's going to be amazing. And again, I will definitely be there. And I hope to see you all there. And that's going to be in September 2025 from the 27th through the 28th. I think that may be it for now. But as always, if there are any new updates, you can find those by following at Susto Podcast on every social media platform. And we're going to go ahead and get into today's episode. We are continuing the curanderismo series, and today we will be talking about El Niño Fidencio.
Hey, what's up? I'm Charlie.
And I'm Tyler.
And we are Believing the Bizarre,
a paranormal podcast that dives into the unknown and the unusual every Tuesday.
We discuss hauntings, cryptids, aliens, UFO encounters, conspiracies, and more.
And we break down whether or not we find them believable.
All right, listen, if you're not paying for electricity, you're not paying for dinner.
saw a terrifying looking face pressed to the window with gaping eyes.
I almost reached it when the laughter stopped suddenly, and a sound behind me made me turn around.
Sorry, I was gonna do it, but then I had SpaceX.
So we got you covered, whether you like horror or laughs, or both. We actually really hope it's both.
With over 3 million downloads, you'll be joining a bizarro community that we promise is more than just Mothman and our parents.
We even take creepy stories from our listeners and turn them into episodes.
Check out Believing the Bizarre on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Believing the Bizarre, a podcast as bizarre as you are.
Niño Fidencio was born José de Jesús Fidencio Constantino Cintora on October 17, 1898, in the village of Yuriria, Guanajuato, Mexico. Although details of Fidencio's life are largely unknown, in some biographical accounts he was born into a large, poor family. Fidencio is described as highly religious as a young boy and, quote, at the age of 8 he began to display special mental powers, guessing, thinking, and recognizing his peers despite being blindfolded. He also performed his first healing by restoring his mother's broken arm. He may have worked on a Yucatan plantation as a young boy and served as an altar boy in the local church after returning to Guanajuato. Fidencio is said to have acquired his nickname El Niño, or the boy, due to the fact that he always retained a soft, high-pitched voice and a childish face and demeanor. Because of this, there has been speculation he never experienced typical puberty. The Mexican Revolution and its aftershocks set the scene for a 12-year-old Niño Fidencio. The destruction and violence occurring during the war and the torment and despair that remained afterwards left many in the country seemingly broken, physically, mentally, and spiritually. The Mexican government and the Catholic Church were locked in a battle for 10 years following the war. The power and privilege of the church and clergy had been restricted in the Constitution of 1917. Consequently, church property was nationalized and the church was prohibited from criticizing the government in any way. Catholic priests were imprisoned, expelled, or even executed. President Plutarco Elias Calles, president from 1924 to 1928, became known for his advancement of an anti-Catholic agenda. In 1926, Calles' law set forth severe punishments for any violation of the Constitution. In protest, the Catholic Church essentially went on strike in Mexico. Throughout the country, clergymen canceled religious services. The struggle between church and state was cause for unrest and initiated a rebellion from 1926 to 1929, known as the Cristero Rebellion, an uprising consisting of armed priests and laypersons. Thus, the country was in turmoil, leaving many looking for a savior. The religious felt oppressed. There was now a severe lack of access to the church as well as social services. It was at this time of rising tumult that El Niño appeared in Espinazo. Niño Fidencio rapidly acquired a reputation as a curandero. The same year he arrived in Espinazo in 1925, Fidencio began to take on tasks usually associated with women, including caring for sick and newborn animals, working in a kitchen, and watching over children while showing a high interest in both healing and religion. When a mine collapsed at La Reforma that first year, Fidencio cured 15 of those who had survived. It was then that people first began to seek El Niño and to travel to the little town of Espinazo in hopes of miracles. In 1927, Fidencio reported that he had experienced a vision in which Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit appeared to him and called him to his sacred vocation of relieving others' suffering. This vision is reported to have come at a time of personal desperation. According to Fidencio, the vision came as he sat distressed under a sacred pepper tree in the city. It was around this sacred tree that Fidencio later performed many of his public healing sessions while surrounded by miracle seekers. These public healings ran both day and night, often for several days at a time. The circle formed around the living folk saint by these miracle seekers became known as El Círculo de Curación, or the Healing Circle. El Niño was believed to have possessed miraculous powers since childhood. Of these, he was particularly noted for his powers of clairvoyance. Many reported that he knew when a terminally ill person approached him, he would tell them to go and make their peace with God, as he could do nothing but pray for them. To many who sought his powers, El Niño's body itself was a holy cure. Fidencio was thus able to perform mass healings without having to cure each person individually. Such mass healings included the throwing of fruit into a crowd of the afflicted, or Fidencio himself being passed through a crowd of people, lying above them as they held him uplifted in their arms to pass over the gathering. On February 8, 1928, despite his anti-Catholic political agenda, Mexican President Gallas visited with Fidencio for 6 hours. Many believed that he went to El Niño with a skin condition, seeking a miracle from the folk saint. He is said to have pulled Fidencio into his private train and even to have worn a garment belonging to the curandero. With this event, the Mexico City press began to take great interest in El Niño, and his popularity greatly increased. Many interpreted the president's visit as an endorsement of El Niño and the folk Catholicism practiced in Espinazo as opposed to the institutional Catholic Church of the country, to which he had clearly shown his opposition. It was soon reported by Mexican newspapers that the folk healer's home had been completely surrounded by over 100 improvised shacks, creating a community of the mentally and physically ill. For some, these lodgings weren't as temporary as they would have hoped. The numbers of afflicted persons seeking aid grew so large that some had to remain there for weeks or months before receiving treatment. Espinazo became filled with people suffering from paralysis, cancer, syphilis, leprosy, mental illness, and numerous other maladies. Hundreds soon turned to thousands as the ill and dying amassed in the small town. The area they inhabited came to be referred to as El Campo del Dolor, or the Field of Pain. El Niño is as famous for the number of healings he performed as he is for the unusual ways in which they were done. While he engaged in healings, patients were fully conscious. Neither tranquilizers nor pain medications were given, yet they reportedly felt no pain. His tools were often as unconventional as his methods. He regularly removed tumors with pieces of glass. He would heal paralysis with a swing, and he often performed ritual cleansings in mud and his own bath water. The medications and baths he administered were made from desert and native plants he collected. Over his time as a curandero, El Niño amassed a large following some referred to as cult-like. This group of followers came to be known as the Fidencistas, a small army of the ultra-faithful called the Brigada Roja, or Red Brigade, encircled, sheltered, and protected El Niño from the constant attacks of the press, the medical community, the government, and the church. Vested interests played a part in maintaining the cult of El Niño Fidencio. Espinazo had become one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in Mexico, and it remains so today. Legions of faithful, along with those seeking a miracle, journey to Espinazo year after year. Many in and around the small community earn their living by serving these visitors. El Niño's physical appearance, simple mannerisms, tunic in the style of biblical times, gentle alto voice, and beardless face further enhanced his growing mythic and cult figure status. It is not surprising that followers sometimes referred to him as the Christ of Espinazo. Before his death, he had begun to act out scriptural events, emulating the life of Christ, further supporting his cult figure status. El Niño had an uncanny ability to anticipate questions and provide accurate answers while delivering spontaneous and profound orations on complicated religious topics. Like Jesus Christ, El Niño chose to deliver his spiritual messages by using a combination of parable and allegory, and often staged simple plays to make his point. El Niño's healings of the masses were reported to be damaging to the licensed doctors and drugstores of northern Mexico in newspaper reports. The press reports stated that the shift of patients from legitimate health services to that of Fidencio was the cause of serious financial problems for those involved in the licensed medical care industry. On February 18, 1929, Fidencio had legal proceedings initiated against him. The state of Nuevo León accused him of practicing medicine illegally. As a result, Fidencio remained under strict scrutiny for the remainder of his life, constantly criticized by public officials representing health and medicine. He was arrested twice on similar charges. This negative publicity caused the Roman Catholic Church to further distance itself from El Niño. The church had already been engaged in a long and difficult struggle with the government and did not wish to provide additional reasons for governmental distrust of the church. Fidencio passed away just before his 40th birthday on October 19, 1938. Although the exact cause of Niño Fidencio's death is unknown, it was conjectured by many both inside and outside of the Fidencista movement that overexhaustion and undernutrition likely played a large role. He had begun to suffer from an unknown illness in 1935, and although there was no conclusive diagnosis, pictures of the folk saint in his last years make him appear bloated. To many of his adherents, this was another sign of his holiness. They attributed the bloating to the Holy Spirit, which would not cease filling his body. It is also believed that an image of Christ was found on Fidencio's chest and an image of the Virgen de Guadalupe on his heart after his death. The tension between licensed health providers and the medical industry and Fidencio led to the popular belief in the folk saint's death being an assassination initiated by the doctors who opposed him. Many of his adherents believed that while El Niño was in a state of meditation, which lasted 3 days, the doctors took the opportunity to announce the death of the curandero as his body appeared lifeless and performed an autopsy. It is believed that the doctors began the autopsy by making an incision in his throat. Warm blood spurted out, showing that he had been alive. The doctors responsible are reported to have died shortly after. The popular conception of El Niño being murdered by doctors is likely the result of a photograph of the faith healer's autopsy in which 2 doctors are examining the neck wound. Although followers of Niño Fidencio adhere to the basic tenets of Roman Catholicism and consider themselves Catholics, Fidencio is not recognized as a saint by the Roman Catholic Church. Since Roman Catholicism strictly forbids veneration of anyone not officially beatified or canonized, veneration of Fidencio is discouraged. From a Roman Catholic perspective, Fidencismo shifts the focus away from Jesus Christ in favor of the Mexican Messianic, believed by many to be the reincarnation of Christ himself. Beginning in the late 1920s, he became known as the Christ of Espinazo. Fidencistas have also appropriated the iconic presentation of the Virgen de Guadalupe through the popular image known as El Niño Guadalupano, in which Fidencio is substituted for the Virgen. Fidencio's claim to spirit channeling, which serves as a fundamental component of the movement, has further exacerbated tensions with the Church. However, Fidencio's rejection by the Roman Catholic hierarchy has not deterred Fidencista enthusiasm. El Niño Fidencio told his followers specifically that he would communicate with them through spirit mediums after his death. He warned them that many would claim to be him. "Review them very carefully," he said, "because only a special few will truly deliver my message." Welcome back, little friends. I have been enjoying so much how well documented and researched these curanderos have been. It's very reassuring and relieving to know that this information is being preserved because these people were pillars of community and culture and history. So I love that. Of course, this episode would not be possible without the researchers that have already done this work. So the main source that I used for today's episode, it comes from a Dr. Tony Zavaleta from his website. It's that's drtonyzavaleta.com. And he has a whole section on Niño Fidencio research on his website, along with other curanderismo research. And he has a couple of books out. So my TBR list, just every episode, every day, my to be read list just gets longer and longer. But he has a ton of great research on here, even pictures that I will be posting on the social media post for this episode. But yeah, I used his website to put the story together. And I also used several other resources, or there were other points that I wanted to cover. So this first one comes from Revista, which is a Harvard review of Latin America. And this was published in 2021. At the time of publishing, this was by Alfredo Garcia Garza, who was a PhD student in the Committee on the Study of Religion at Harvard University. I'm not sure if he has gone on to complete his PhD program. If he has, if you're listening, congratulations. If not, I mean, hey, getting into a PhD program and doing any of that work is still amazing. But this entry is by Alfredo Garcia Garza. It's called El Niño Fidencio, Healing Power of the Afflicted. And there were just a couple of things that I wanted to read here. And again, I think the perceptions of El Niño Fidencio by the Catholic Church are a very interesting talking point here. So right off the bat, Alfredo addresses this in this piece, and he says, "A few years ago, during my first semester at Harvard Divinity School, I was shocked when Professor David Carrasco lectured about his research on the transnational Mexican curandero, or spiritual healer, El Niño Fidencio. José Fidencio de Jesús Cintura Constantino. Up until that moment, I had largely kept my own childhood years of attending Fidencio's healing rites in rural Mexico a private matter. I was afraid how people would react if I told them I grew up going to curaciones, or healing rituals, where a materia, or medium, channeled the spirit of a dead Mexican curandero. So I kept those religious experiences to myself." The Catholic guilt is just so strong, even though these people, Fidencistas and Fidencio, identified as Catholics. But I think, again, it's the aspect of the mediumship, or the psychic power to channel the spirit of El Niño Fidencio, is where the Catholic Church is like, no, that is devilry, that's witchcraft. Although people all the time say like, oh, Jesus came to me, or I don't know. It's, you all know how I feel about the Catholic Church. That part of it I feel like is very hypocritical, but oh well. It's inherently spooky. Anyway, this continues. To my surprise, I learned that Carrasco had actually met El Niño while he was a graduate student at the University of Chicago in the 1970s. He was part of a misión located in the Little Village, a Mexican neighborhood in Chicago. At the same time, he was studying shamanic traditions with the historians of religions Charles H. Long and Mircea Eliade. As I came to understand the vast impact of El Niño, I realized that my own religious experiences and practices could be utilized as an unprecedented source for organizing new knowledge about the sacred. Alfredo goes on to describe his experience at these curaciones, and I wanted to read a bit about that as well. It says, the curacion started by the women praying the rosary behind the materia, again the medium, who in turn was facing the domestic altar. The altar was filled with candles and images of the crucified Christ, the Virgen de Guadalupe, and other saints, and Fidencio. As the rosary came to an end, the materia started yawning. This was the signal that he was about to enter a trance. One of his main assistants covered his head with a towel as the materia's yawning turned into accelerated coughing, and El Niño took possession of his body. Then, Fidencio softly recited 3 Ave Marias in call and response form, marking the end of the ecstatic transition. I would love to observe this. I think it would be so amazing to see like a Fidencista curacion in action, and of course with like the utmost respect, just like pure curiosity. And I don't know, I'm just like, I would love to see it firsthand. I feel like from what I'm read about the Fidencista movement is it embraces all of the supernatural parts of Catholicism that I feel like institutionalized Catholicism is afraid to do or looks down on. He continues, as El Niño Fidencio manifested himself, he greeted everyone and led them in reciting different prayers. One of the initial prayers used to announce his presence blessed el presente y el ausente, and believers and non-believers alike, as well as those addicted to alcohol and those in prison. In other words, El Niño started curaciones by blessing the marginalized, those neglected, shamed, and persecuted by political or religious institutions. I think this has been a big through line with each of the curanderos that we've covered so far, with Don Pedro Jaramillo, with Teresa Urrea, and now with El Niño Fidencio. Is it's almost as if they're doing the actual work that the church is supposed to be doing. You know, they're helping the sick and the poor with no questions. And listen, I know that there are churches out there that are doing good. # not all churches, whatever. When I'm reading these stories, it's like, you know, like Don Pedro Jaramillo gave back so much of the money that was given to him, so much of the food that he bought with the money that he raised. He gave that to the community around them and supported them. Teresa Urrea, she was a champion for marginalized people, for indigenous people, for laborers, for women. And now El Niño Fidencio, it's said that he's doing the same thing. He's providing a service to people who were not able to access it. Another thing that I thought was interesting in this article is the mention of something called alabanzas, which are religious hymns central to curaciones. And it's very interesting. It reminds me of like corridos, for example. You know, corridos are typically stories. They're a preservation of a story, and they're made into songs, which I know happens in many cultures, but they're made into a song to preserve these stories. And so I'm going to read from here, and this says, again, alabanzas are religious hymns central to curaciones, or these healing circles. Across time and space, ordinary people have written them to express their religious experiences as followers of Fidencio. The alabanzas mention places like San Antonio and Chicago, where misiones organize curaciones for the materia to channel the spirit of El Niño Fidencio. Again, the materia is the medium. This continues, the center in the alabanzas is a tiny town of the center called Espinazo. It originated as a railway station located in the outskirts of the states of Nuevo León and Coahuila. Espinazo became known as El Campo del Dolor, as we mentioned earlier, or the Field of Pain, and a site of pilgrimage since El Niño Fidencio rose in influence and fame in the late 1920s, when thousands of desperate people came in seek of healing. Espinazo is referred to in dozens, if not hundreds, of alabanzas. So I'm going to play one of those now because I actually was able to find some on YouTube, and let's see if whichever one I find mentions Espinazo. Un palomito muy blanco viene bajando del cielo, es el niñito Fidencio, brillando como un lucero. Todos podemos mirar aquel palomito blanco, pero hay que creer con fe en el Espíritu Santo. And the last thing I'll read about that, here it continues, the alabanzas include witness accounts of Fidencio's power and unconventional healing methods in making the blind see and the mute speak. They mention his use of medicinal plants and the significance of el pirulito, the pepper tree under which God gave him the don, or gift of healing, and revealed to him his mission on earth. Simply put, Fidencio's mission is to use his don to heal the suffering poor. Thus, the alabanzas conceive Espinazo as holy ground, a space that became sacralized through a manifestation of the sacred. The next article I have here is from the San Antonio Heron, and this was published in, again, 2021 by Kayla Padilla, and it's called An Evening with El Niño Fidencio, a Mexican curandero. And this article, it's really cool. It's just basically Kayla explaining how she went to a botanica or yerberia, and I guess there was a materia there, or the medium, who was able to channel El Niño Fidencio, and she allegedly spoke to El Niño Fidencio through this person. But it's very interesting, and she says at one point, I followed the note taker to the back of the shop, and she brought me into a room Coronilla had walked me through earlier. This time, El Niño Fidencio was waiting for me. Stand in front of El Niño, she advised me. I had forgotten the note-taker was going to be in the room, and as shy as that made me, it wasn't going to stop me from asking a question about a vulnerable subject, love. After asking my question, El Niño Fidencio responded and gave me genuine advice that was applicable to my life. Advice that I've decided not to mention in this piece due to its specificity. Which, that alone is very, because it's like, if she didn't think it was important, like, why not include it? But they continue. Though I had gone into the botanica feeling that my question was too cheesy or unimportant compared to the others, El Niño answered my question with sincerity. I really could ask anything. But even answering my question, he kept talking. To my surprise, he said something else that had nothing to do with my question. According to El Niño, I had the ability to read tea leaves if I really sharpened my practice. But I just thought that was a cool story, this like firsthand experience with Niño Fidencio, you know. And the last thing I have here is actually a YouTube video. So if y'all are interested in watching it, it is called The Miraculous Life of El Niño Fidencio, and it's a Vice short documentary. I have not watched any of it yet, but I will. I'm actually going to be watching this. Today's Thursday, Wednesday if you're a patron, but this Friday with best school friends for our virtual hangout. So you all should have gotten your invitation already on Patreon. I already sent that out, but I mentioned you should listen to this week's episode before we hang out. So I would say, yeah, this is a really good, fun precursor to listen to this before we watch this short documentary together. So those are the sources that I have today. Okay, I also wanted to mention before I forget, I think one detail that was so interesting to me when they're explaining when he would do mass healings is Dr. Zavaleta wrote it in a very nice way, but I was like, oh, he's crowd surfing, which I think is amazing. Imagine just having the ability to heal by crowd surfing. I wish I had that power. The way that I would go to every show and just jump off a stage and crowd surf and be like, healed, 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 healed. I don't know why. It's cool, but it's kind of funny to me that, I don't know. I'm just imagining him crowd surfing and some really cool song playing, and he's just being a total badass. Anyway, I thought that I just wanted to make sure to mention that before I forgot. Dr. Zavaleta's research was just so thorough and comprehensive, and I'm adding once more to my book list. Should I put my book wish list out there? And if you all want, you can send me a book because I have so many on there. I can talk more about that later, but those are the sources I have. So yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back, Ghoul friends. So, again, so interesting, this through line of these people who have been in direct contact with Christ or God or whatever source you believe that is presenting itself as Christianity and Catholicism. Their mission is always to help people, and they do. And they're just one person that have amassed followings that allow them to help people, versus, like I mentioned earlier, there are some actual institutionalized places of worship that claim to be helping communities, and you know how that can go sometimes. Again, hashtag not all churches. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you've been enjoying this series. I think I may have one more episode left in this series, but again, you all let me know if you have any recommendations. If you know of a curandere that you believe should be covered on an episode, please send it in. As always, you can also send in your own scary stories or photo, video, audio recording, anything that you think is spooky that I should share on a Letters from the Beyond episode or on the social medias. You already know how to do that. Email me, go to the website, leave in a review or Q&A. And I think Spotify is going to start just opening a comment section on podcast episodes. So it's going to be just like an open forum now, basically. So you can go ahead and do all that in there too. As always, please feel free to interact with the show, rate, review, follow, all of that good thing, and follow online for any and all updates on the show. That's Susto Podcast on every single social media platform. Again, we will be watching The Miraculous Life of El Niño Fidencio at this week's Summerween virtual hangout online if you are a best girlfriend at patreon.com. And also all of the direct links for the sources are in the Susto Google Docs. That's also in Patreon. And if you are a paid Patreon subscriber on any level, then you have access to listen to this episode early and ad-free. Speaking of patrons, thank you so much to this episode's patrons. You are Liza, Sadie, Rachel, Alejandra, Luther, April, Mario, Eva, Dee, Josette, Sam, Angela and Co, Mandy, Jules, Lori, Jeannie, Desiree, Anna, Ashes, Neresa, Rachel, Azucena, Rios, Anna, Marlene, Chata, Lainey, Desiree, Aaliyah, Cynthia, Serena Flamenca, Lupe, Belinda, and Isaiah. Thank you all so much from the bottom of the pit where my soul is supposed to be. I will talk to you all in the next one. And until then, no te asustes. Bye.